Hello, one and all. This is my recap and review of The Death Mage, Volume 3. And I gotta say, this volume, it was dull. It was so overwhelmingly dull. Seriously, longtime viewers of my channel know that I am not a negative person, but this might be the most negative review I've given anything on this channel since Promised Neverland Season 2. Oh, that was mean. That was so mean. I mean, not that bad. Obviously not that bad, but it was just a real slog to get through. And it wasn't even the slice life stuff. I love slice life stuff. Reincarnated Slime, one of my favorite series of all time, and half every volume of that is just, city building, infrastructure, world building, blah, 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 blah. My issue here is the slice life stuff kept interrupting the interesting stuff, and then we finally finished it and got back to the interesting stuff. It was either delayed again by more slice of life stuff, or just end up being not all that interesting in the first place, which very disappointing. I mean, I still do like this series, but this volume was just really hard to get through. And with the start of this volume, we have Van as party trekking through Demon Barrens to reach Taloshiam, the city of undead giants. And this is a pretty strong start. We have Van encountering so many unique and interesting enemies, giant hedgehogs, flying sharks, and freaking dinosaurs. Oh, Van is so happy to see freaking dinosaurs with his own two eyes in real life. It's amazing. And then we get to the city, and all these undead giants bow their heads in worship of Van. I love it. I freaking love it. Not only is the death attribute lore skill incredibly useful, but it leads to these epic moments of these powerful undeads, all worshipping him, all revering him, all honoring him as their god, including their leader, Nuaza the Lich, who proclaims, "Oh, Oracle Child, you are most welcome finally here in the capital of the sun. Please save us. Save those who only wait here to turn to dust. Please save us." And the story behind the city's fall might be the best thing in this entire volume, seriously. Because 200 years ago, the Undead Empire wanted to both weaken their vassal state, the Shield Kingdom, and steal as much treasure as possible from Taloshiam, so they ordered an invasion, and it just failed in the most spectacular ways imaginable. First off, all that gold they wanted? Well, turns out the princess took the whole lot of it and fled through a tunnel to Album, their ally, who happens to be an enemy of the Undead Empire. And as for their second objective, well, it worked. It certainly worked, as not only did the Shield Kingdom suffer major losses, but all of their heroes died, including Mikhail, the legendary spear hero. And they even lost his legendary spear. So sad. And then, when the Album Empire found out about this, they decided to invade the Shield Kingdom. And they also suffered heavy losses there as well. So many losses that the Undead Empire actually had to intervene and send in soldiers to protect their vassal states. So yeah, while the Shield Kingdom technically won and technically destroyed this entire country, in the long run, it is considered one of the most historic failures in all of freaking history. And when Nuaza finds out the full story, he proudly proclaims, "Suck it!" And then after that, the whole party has convinced Van not to commit mass genocide against the entire Shield Kingdom, even though they do kinda sorta deserve it. Anyway though, then Van gets to work fixing up the city, making it nice and shiny, and then decides to go to a meeting with the Sword King Borks, the only one of Taloshiam's heroes who has been revived as an undead. And this is a really exciting conversation, but before we actually get to that, we then have many pages of the rest of Van's party basically saying, I think Van is overworking himself. I think he's pushing himself too hard. And they are absolutely freaking right. I mean, let's not forget, this dude is freaking 3 years old. He should barely be walking, and yet he is essentially running this entire freaking city and doing work 24/7 to make it shine, make it polish, to just make things better. And he's using his resist malady skill to hold off the exhaustion, but sooner or later he will crash and probably die. So yeah, they're fully right to do this, but it still just brings progression to a grinding freaking halt. But anyway though, before that actually happens, we actually do the meeting with the Sword King Borks, who's been standing in place for 200 freaking years, just trying to save his allies. I love it. I love this man's dedication, and I love his design. I mean, seriously, he looked pretty good in the manga, but here, he's just so much more striking, so much more intimidating, so much more awesome looking. I don't think that was a sentence, but you know what I mean. Seriously. Great design, absolutely fantastic illustration here. And, God, what I love so much about this encounter is the fact that despite the fact this dude is undead, he isn't actually all that charmed by Van, meaning that he actually has some resistance to Van's death attribute allure scale, and I so love this because, you know, if there were no limits to this, that means Van could go up to, you know, undead gods, undead demon lords, not really sure they have them here, but either way, and be like, okay, you work for me now, even though you are way stronger than me. The fact there is a limit does mean that Van still needs to, you know, win over the truly powerful undead. Fascinating. But anyway, though, despite Borks's very grisly, tough demeanor, all he asks from Van is to break the magical ice behind him so that he can free his companions. And this is, you know, impossible. Even Nuaza says this is impossible for anyone less than a god. Thankfully, though, Van is a god! And I really do love how this goes about, because it'd be so easy to say, oh, Van has 100 million MPs, therefore he just breaks the curse by overpowering it. But instead, they have this death attribute of magic can absorb and dissipate magic, meaning that curses are just, you know, not an issue to him at all. He can break basically any curse in the entire world, and it makes him so utterly broken, but in a much more interesting way than him just having way too much MP. Fascinating. And then, oh boy, then things get interesting as Van finds out that at the end of this corridor that was blocked by the cursed ice is, you know, a dragon golem, which is very terrifying, but behind that golem is the relic of the goddess Vita, which can make new bodies for the dead, meaning Van finally has the ability to save his mother. All he needs to do is get strong enough to take down this dragon golem. Unfortunately, he can't really do anything for the next 10 days, as everyone decides that he needs to take a nice long rest. And while I do agree with their idea, you know, in theory, at the same time, we were also just told there is a job change chamber in the Adventurers Guild, meaning Van can finally find out if the god's third curse actually affects him, unable to enter existing jobs. And this is incredibly important because if Van isn't able to take on jobs, then he is basically as strong as he'll ever become. Yes, he can keep training, yes, he can keep improving his magic, gaining new skills, blah blah blah, but it will just be at such a slow pace that he will never catch up to people who killed his mother or his former classmates who are on their way to this world to probably kill him. I mean, maybe not, but probably. So yeah, just finding out we need to wait 10 freaking days, basically an entire chapter, to find out whether or not Van can actually change his job is just so freaking aggravating and really ticked me off while I was reading this. Though there was admittedly some interesting stuff in this wait. Van invented Jenga, Frisbee, and Reversey. He did some research in the library and found out that because he is a half dark elf, half vampire, he could probably live to be up to 5,000 years old, even longer since he can, you know, unage himself. He fixed the baths. Oh, and as for the skeleton that walks around following him, well, that basically has a mouse soul in it. So he decided to make it stronger by adding in empty souls devoid of memories and emotions, which turned the mouse human skeleton into a talking skeleton knight who still only has memories of his time as a mouse. And this is at least such a great moment where he tells the story of his family being killed, and it's like, oh my god, he remembers what it was like to be a human, but no, turns out he just remembers what it's like to be a mouse, and that was a cat that killed his family. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love that. Such a good fake out. Oh, and then Van made him a hamster wheel because, you know, of course he did. Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. Anyway, though, then we got Van's birthday party. He turned 3 years old, and to celebrate, his friends made him a freaking dinosaur museum. Yeah, they had no idea why these, non-dragon lizards were so interesting to him, but they still could tell, Van really likes these things. We should get them for him. So they killed them in the dungeon and then dragged them all the way back to the city without Van noticing. That is just, oh God above. That's just a depiction, such a great way of showing their love and dedication to him. It's so amazing, so amazing, and made me love them all the more. And it made me hate his uncle even more because the reason why Van is obsessed with dinosaurs is because his uncle wouldn't let him go to a museum on a school trip as he viewed that as a luxury. Yeah, that uncle, he ain't right. He absolutely ain't right. Anyway, though, then Van finally gets a chance to go to the job change chamber, and he finds out he can either become a golem creator or a death mage. A little bit on the nose right there. A little bit on the nose. Love it. And what he basically figures out is that the god of reincarnation, whose name I couldn't even begin to pronounce, is unable to keep Van from getting any jobs because having a job is a fundamental principle of the world, and he couldn't alter that. Also, he's probably an idiot, which, yes, he is. Anyway, though, Van picks Death Mage and levels up Death Attribute Magic, Non-Attribute Magic, Skip Incantation, Magic Control, and Spirit Body, and he also acquires the skill Alchemy and Magical Power Auto Recovery. Both skills he's been working towards for, probably years, even though he just literally now turned 3. Yeah, getting a job makes him way more powerful. And also, I just so love the job system of this world, because once you pick a job, you're basically locked in place until you max it out, reach level 100, and then you can pick another job. And I'm fairly certain to keep all of the, boosts you had from that job when you get the new jobs. And that creates a really interesting level system where if you're level 100 and I'm only level 5, I can still beat you because, yes, I'm only level 5, that's just for this job. You have no idea how many jobs I've mastered before it, and they all make me, just a little bit stronger. Love it, absolutely love it. Anyway, though, then it's finally time to go dungeon grinding to become as OP as physically possible. But that gets interrupted by a ghoul giving birth. And of freaking course, the umbilical cord is wrapped around the neck. Because, seriously, that is the only way pregnancies ever go wrong in any media I've ever read. And I'm not an expert at pregnancy by any sort of imagination, but I'm pretty certain there are other things that can go wrong than that. And yet that is the only thing I've ever seen actually used in media as a way of it possibly going wrong. It kind of irks me in a weird way. But anyway, though, this is not an issue at all for Van. He's able to very easily fix it and doesn't even explain what went wrong. He's like, oh, it's no problem. Don't worry about it. Love it. Absolutely love it. Anyway, though, Van decides to stay behind and avoid the dungeon crawling for a bit longer until all the ghouls give birth. He also fixes up the sewage system, makes magical charms to increase fertility, and invents soy sauce, which makes him even more of a hero to the undead giants because the legendary hero Zakato tried and failed again and again to create soy sauce, but now Van has done it. He has brought delicious cooking to the undeads. Huzzah! But anyway, though, then we finally get to dungeon exploring, and it is dull. It is so overwhelmingly dull. I mean, I wasn't expecting much of a challenge given this is a D-ranked dungeon and Van is so incredibly broken, but still. We start off with Van facing off against goblins one at a time to acquire brawling proficiency, and I do admittedly love the fact that he chose this just to make his mom happy so he can fight with his claws just like his dear old dad. That's sweet. That is so sweet. But then, just moving forward, they get to one floor where he has to give a dude relationship advice, gets to another where he sees the giants carving out stone to make a statue of Van for the town square, gets to another where the giants are mining salt, because as it turns out, zombies do get hungry and really like tasty food, and they become sort of addicted to his miso, very concerning. And then finally get to the bottom floor, and the big bad boss of the dungeon turns out to be an orc general, an enemy that everyone in the party can already defeat very easily, and the goods it drops are, just pretty pointless, pretty useless for all of them. We then go to the Darren Aquatic Cavern, where they're able to get seafood. And this is one is really a bit more interesting. They bring along Braga, the Black Goblin, who has already evolved into a Black Goblin scout, and Van believes that one day he will become a ninja, an assassin, because his skills are just so perfectly suited for, covert work, covering his footsteps, being unseen by the enemy. Very awesome. And then when we get to the bottom, the enemy is a giant island turtle boss, and hidden boss who is extra hard, though still admittedly weaker than Noble Orc, and this shows as Van is able to easily crack its shell. I mean, I say easily, but he did break a lot of bones in his arm. Still, though, this wasn't much of a challenge for him at all. And the big thing of this chapter ends up being Katya, the adventurer turned orc slave turned ghoul, cries about how utterly and completely helpless she is. And I mean, not gonna lie, when I read this chapter of the manga, I thought this was, filler, basically something added in, or maybe something from like a bonus extra story the author came up with later. I didn't think this was, the big conclusion of the freaking volume. Very disappointing. I mean, I do get thematically where this is coming from. Katya is like, Van. They both hit a wall, they both weren't able to overcome it, and they're both afraid of being unable to compete with the truly powerful people in the world. I mean, Van is trying to get revenge against, a priest who is one of the strongest people out there, and past that are his classmates and other Japanese people who are coming to this world probably to kill him. So, yeah, that's an issue that they both share, and Van is able to give some advice and convince her that she should try learning some magic, because that's what female ghouls usually exceed at, not swordsmanship. Though, of course, there are exceptions, like Bastia, who has now evolved into a rank 5 ghoul Amazon, an unheard of race who have red tattoos across their bodies, which give them resistance to magic. Very cool. And, yeah, that's basically the end of the volume. There's an observation diary after that, which I do really like, as, it's basically all of the new monsters writing about Van, who they consider to be a father / king / hero. And I really do love seeing their opinion of him, because, first off, Van is very worried about his, incredibly short stature, and is like, oh man, are they going to respect me when I'm shorter than them? Yes, they absolutely respect him. Though they actually thought that Van was a fully grown person, and that Dampiers were just naturally that short. Oh, I love these idiots. And they proceed to draw what they think Van will look like when he grows up, and it is some sort of grotesque chimera monster. And the volume ends with them being like, if this kingdom ends up thriving, ends up prospering, then the journal these children kept might end up being, something that future historians look back and wonder, what the freak is this? What were they trying to say here? And that's just such a great ending for this volume. But, like I said, nothing really happened this volume. They kept, hinting at interesting things, Van facing off against the dragon golem, the vampires coming to hunt him down. Alright, forgot to mention that. There are vampires on their way to Van right now, because even though they aren't too worried about, an infant Dampier, apparently there is like a rule among vampires: never let a Dampier grow up, never let a Dampier lead an army, and never let Dampier go to this one area on the map that Van is fairly close to, that is home to another order of vampires who are against the order that Van's father was a part of. And speaking of that order, turns out they worship Hai-Hiryu Shukaka, the demon god of living pleasure. Yes, they are a cult fully devoted to making people suffer. They believe that their means of appeasing the god is through the suffering of others. So, yeah, they are a really, really messed up bunch. Honestly, I'm very concerned about, Van's father and Van's mother and her taste in men if he was a part of this order. Very concerning. Very, very concerning. Anyway, though, Sirkrent Uzba, the man basically responsible for the death of Van's father, failed to kill Van twice now, and now has his skin filled with rats as he suffers over and over and over again, until he promises to go find Van and kill him. But, the progenitors, the main vampires, don't really trust him, so they send along Eleonora, the young vampire who has an incredible amount of potential, more so than anyone else in her generation, and they believe she will become, one of the best vampires, one of the strongest vampires of all time, given, enough time. And again, these two, they were just on their way to the Taloshim, to Van, this entire volume. And I kind of figured the volume would at least end with a chapter like, yes, we're finally here, Taloshim. It's time to kill the Dampier. Nope, they're just still on their freaking way. What the heck? Seriously, what the heck? Though I will say there's one thing, one scene from this I really do like, where they basically say that they won't kill any monsters on the way to Taloshim because they're worried that the spirits will go warn Van they're coming. This is, very helpful because they do end up sneaking into Taloshim. Then, they won't kill anyone along the way because they won't want their spirits to go find Van and warn him they're on their way. Huzzah! Good for them! Anyway, though, those are my thoughts on this volume. Like I said before, it was just really, really dull. We kept getting these really awesome hints like Van's going to go meet with Vorkits, the legendary undead hero, or Van's going to go get a job change, or Van's going to go fight in the dungeons, or Van is going to go fight the dragon golem. And then those interesting things just never freaking happened, or got delayed again and again by this slice of life stuff, and it just really freaking irked me. Again, though, I'm not done with the series. I'm definitely going to read the next volume. Hopefully by then something will happen. Either, they'll face off against the dragon golem, or the vampires will show up and Van will have to face them. Face off against Sir Krent Uzba, the man who killed his father and made his mother cry. Oh, that's going to be fun. That is going to be a lot of fun. Let's not forget that Van spent, a good 20, 30 years being tortured in his last world, so he knows every way imaginable to make this dude cry, to make this dude suffer. And given that he's a vampire, he can make him suffer for a very, very long time. But anyway, though, please let me know think down below. Did you find this volume dull? Did you find it boring? Or was it just a me thing? I could certainly see that being the case. But anyway, though, until next time, peace!